Be sure to subscribe for more content.
What is up, ladies and gents? Welcome to the BigBC Finance Channel, and I hope you're having a very lovely day today. So in today's video, we're going to be talking all about Luna Classic, what has happened to it recently, and why I think Luna Classic is in a pretty critical area right now, along with the price prediction for Luna into the future. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that. And of course, if you appreciate the daily analysis on this channel and you're one of the 86% of people that watch my videos that have not yet subscribed, be sure to hit the subscribe button. So without further ado, let's get into this video and let's talk about this short-term analysis first, and then I'll come with a price prediction later in this video. So to explain these annotations that you're seeing on the screen, we are at the moment here on Luna Classic going in some sort of downwards direction. Of course, we can see that because we're bound by this upper resistance line here that's connected the price from this high at the start of December, and since that point the price has come to test this. So you guys can see that we tested it once up here, we got one test in this region, and since the last video we got more tests, one here and two in this region here. So actually 5 times this line has been tested, so we know it's quite a reliable resistance. It's a place where the prices come to a lot but has never passed. So in essence, this reliable resistance here in purple kind of determined the trends here on Luna Classic over the past several days. We're going in a fairly solid downwards direction, coupled by the fact as well that we're below this 100-hour moving average, a main determinant here on trend. And when prices spend their time well below the moving average here, then we are in a bearish trend. So two things telling us that we're going downwards. In my last video, I said I was monitoring a resistance like this, and it turns out that Luna Classic did exactly as expected. And of course, I know this because I've been studying Luna Classic and its price action now since the start of September. And what you'll notice with Luna Classic is that it has a tendency to follow these resistances. Let me bring your attention here to the start of December. For example, we saw this downtrend here on Luna Classic. We saw an area where the price accelerated in the downwards direction, followed by some sort of sideways movement. And when Luna Classic was ready, we saw a pump in the upwards direction. And we know that once the resistance is broken, so it was broken in this area, then prices tend to jet upwards. And they jet upwards with a lot of momentum. We know this because of the large green candles. And we saw a lot of volume accompany this price move in the upwards direction on Luna Classic. Now let's have a game of spot the difference over in this area here. And what you'll notice is that as soon as prices in this region here touched this resistance, so have a look at this region here, prices came down super fast, as we see with this large selling pressure that we have on Luna Classic. It's come down to this area very close to this very important line down here, which I'll talk about in a second. And now what it looks like it's doing is going in some sort of sideways direction. Have a look at the similarities between what we're seeing back over here and what we're seeing in this region here. And if it does repeat itself, what we would expect to see over the course of a day or two is the prices to kind of just move sideways if it repeats what it does over here, and then pump through this resistance line. And this is when we would enter the trade. If we see a lot of momentum and volume, take the prices above this resistance line, we'd enter that trade. And if we did that last time, we would have made 12% on our money. So this is what I'm seeing here on the short term, but this is a pattern that's repeated itself so many times on Luna Classic. If I take you back, for example, throughout the history of Luna Classic, what we've seen is just numerous occasions where this has happened. Look at this setup here. Again, prices come up very steep in this region, follow a general downtrend, followed by intense selling pressure that takes the prices a lot lower, and at some point we just see a breakthrough of this resistance here. Again, back in this region we saw exactly the same thing. Have a look at this. Prices came up very fast, went in a downwards direction, intense selling pressure in this region here, and when prices did break through that resistance line, we had to be patient in this area a little bit, but eventually we saw this trade here. I remember this one being a 25% pump in the upwards direction. And Luna Classic just keeps on doing that and doing that and doing that. So of all the patterns that I've noticed here on Luna Classic, this is quite possibly one of the most important things. So that is what I'm monitoring here on the short term, this kind of resistance going down, because if price breaks through this resistance, it should result in a large price move up. And of course, like I say, I'll be entering the trade once the price breaks through this resistance. But like with anything, like with all chart patterns and analysis, it's never 100% perfect. So why I also think we're in a fairly critical area here in Luna Classic is because we're very close now to this line here, this very important line that I mentioned earlier. And it's particularly important on Luna Classic because if I zoom out to the 1-day chart, if I just ask you to ignore these gray lines and this pink line here and just have a look at this purple line going in the upwards direction, you'll notice that throughout Luna Classic's history, since its inception after the crash, back in May, we've never come below this purple line, or not considerably at least. Of course, you see here the prices peaked below, but in the same day, prices shot straight back up. And so this purple line here forms a very important area of support for Luna Classic. Basically, every time the price comes down to this region, we should see it used as a support by the price for it to go in an upwards direction again. And up until now, it's done very well at that. You can see here, for example, prices came down quite quickly to this purple line here, and we saw a massive bounce up from the Luna Classic price, kind of like a yo-yo. We saw that price go up by about 40% to close that day off. And more recently in this region here, we've seen prices get comfortable using this purple line as a support. And if we do see history repeat itself, we should see prices go in the upwards direction. But of course, if the alternative were to happen and prices start heading below this lifetime support, that would be a massive event. That would be extremely bearish, since this support here has been so well respected throughout the lifetime. So if we do see the alternative happen, if I go on a shorter time frame and we start seeing prices try and break through this resistance, for example, but the resistance proves to be too strong, and we see the prices break below our lifetime support, and I don't mean just a quick dip underneath the water and then back up. I mean, if prices start to do something like this, where they consolidate underneath our lifetime support here on Luna Classic, then this could plunge the prices of Luna Classic a lot further down, in my opinion. And the price level that I have in mind is this one here, this pink line, which has been a historical support once again on Luna Classic at the 13.6 cents mark. Now, this basically ties into what I'm going to be saying about Luna Classic. And the most critical thing is about this as well is that we have an event that could plunge the prices down there, and that event is the inflation report coming out tomorrow for the US markets. Basically, if we go on trading economics, we can see that in my time we have the inflation rate report coming out at 2:30 p.m. And basically, we need this inflation data to be at least as expected according to the consensus. So previously, we saw an inflation rate of 7.7% in the USA. We saw core inflation at 6.3%. And we have this consensus, which analysts and experts predict the inflation rate to be. And if it's higher than these numbers, so if inflation rate actually turns out higher than what the consensus is, it could be the catalyst needed here on Luna Classic for prices to break below its lifetime support and head down lower. But by the same token, if we do see the inflation rate come better than expected, so let's say inflation rate comes at 7% in the USA when it's predicted at 7.3%, then this could again be the catalyst needed for the prices to break through its resistance and have a nice pump here on Luna Classic. So if I just show you what happened as a parable when the last inflation rate came out, so that was the 10th of November, I believe, we saw prices jet in this upwards direction. So basically, inflation rate report came out better than expected in this previous time, and we saw this very nice pump here on Luna Classic in the upwards direction. And so if we do see that, then this could be enough to move the price in a bullish direction for the next few days. But at the same time, if it comes worse than expected, I would definitely expect this line to be broken, this lifetime support. And of course, my next price target stemming from that would be 13.6 cents. Another reason why I think the prices are going to go so low if we see a bad inflation data report is because of what Bitcoin is doing. Bitcoin is the tune of the whole cryptocurrency market. So if we see a major move on Bitcoin, then the chances are we're going to see that reflected in altcoins such as Luna Classic as well. So another catalyst for Luna Classic to move in a very violent down or up direction is what Bitcoin does. And at the moment on Bitcoin, what I am witnessing right now is a potential breakdown from a rising wedge pattern that looks like this. We have a rising wedge, which is a bearish chart pattern. Both trend lines are pointing in the upwards direction, and if this pattern completes, we should see a price target from the breakdown of this distance, which is the first test of support and resistance here. And we just drag our measuring tool to where the breakout is, and we should see a price target of around 15,400 on Bitcoin. Now, if Bitcoin makes this move down like this, for example, then by all means, we're going to see Luna Classic probably reach this 13.6 cents level. Now at the moment, looking at Bitcoin on a shorter time frame, it really does look like we've seen a breakout below this rising wedge. Have a look at the volume as it increases below this purple line here. We see a lot of momentum on the 1 hour chart on the Bitcoin price, and at the moment we're seeing prices start to head up a little bit, but this could be construed as a retest of our support line here in purple. So we could expect the price to reasonably head up a little bit more throughout the day, but then we could see it bounce off and head in a downwards direction. And ultimately, this price target from this rising wedge is 15,400. And again, inflation is definitely going to be a catalyst here. If the inflation comes out worse than expected, this rising wedge is definitely getting filled down to 15,400, and that's going to push Luna Classic down with it as well. But if we see better than expected inflation, then I do think this rising wedge will be invalidated and we could see Bitcoin price head higher. So the critical element of this all is the inflation rate data and what happens there. Basically, anything bad for the inflation rate here when it comes out on Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. my time, whatever happens there will probably be a catalyst for what happens in Bitcoin and the stock market. And of course, if both of them start heading down, then we're going to see Luna Classic get dragged down with it, even if it's only slightly worse in my opinion. So if we only see 0.1% worse than expected here, that's still going to be enough of a catalyst for new sellers to come into the stock market, for new sellers to come into Bitcoin, for the prices to plunge down further. But again, if we see prices as expected or better than expected, then we could probably see this rising wedge invalidated here on Bitcoin, and we can see Luna Classic follow history once again, and for prices to break through this resistance into the upwards direction. So kind of as a summary from this whole video, I'm really watching out for this resistance going down, because, you know, we've got this lifetime support down here, we've got this resistance up here, and one of them is going to be disrespected. So if it is the resistance, this is what history has favored, and we should see a nice pump in the upwards direction once this happens. But if we see the inflation rate data come out tomorrow worse than expected, then that could be the catalyst needed for prices to break down below this lifetime support, which would be a big event since it's never happened before, and therefore we could see prices plunge as far down as 13.6 cents over the course of the next few days, in my opinion. And of course, it ties in with what Bitcoin does as well, because Bitcoin at the moment has seen this breakout from the rising wedge, in my opinion, and if so, that should bring the prices down on Bitcoin to 15,400, which should coincide with Luna Classic heading down to this 13.6 cents. And again, with the stock market, very similar story with this rising wedge going up. We've seen a breakdown from the rising wedge, and if we see bad, that could be enough to bring prices down extremely fast here on the stock market. So that's what I'm keeping my eyes on at the moment for Luna Classic. And really, the fate for Luna Classic kind of hangs in the balance depending on what the inflation rate does when it comes out tomorrow. So I will be talking about that more tomorrow in my videos when we're closer to the event. But otherwise, that's all I have to say in this video. So thank you so much for watching. If you did find it helpful at all, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. But otherwise, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.